Hello, AP biologists. Mrs. Grider here to hopefully answer all of your questions about the lab. I realized as I was making my comments on your papers that I was saying the same thing over and over again. So some of you just had a comment to watch the video, and that was so that I could just say everything once, hopefully in its clearest form, so that you could make those corrections and be prepared for our test. So first thing I want to talk about is graphing. Because we were looking at what happened over a series of days, I really was hoping to see time here on your x-axis. I saw for some other people you did it by the jar. Time was just going to be easier because it helped us to see the progress that was made in terms of carbon dioxide and oxygen in the jar itself. So time would have been ideal because then your y-axis over here could have been oxygen. Specifically, it needs some units in parts per million, or ppm. That's the actual number of oxygen particles in a certain area of the water. Or if you weren't doing oxygen, we could have had instead carbon dioxide, which we measured in terms of the pH. So I actually wouldn't have seen carbon dioxide at all on that axis. I just would have seen the pH. And here's why. So I've got some notes here at the bottom of my page about how we measure these things. So like I said, oxygen is measured in parts per million, right here, oxygen measured in parts per million. And carbon dioxide is measured in terms of pH, and carbon dioxide is an acid. All right, so let's think about acids for a while. We know that on the pH scale we have 0, 7, and 14. All right, let me change my color. So 7 is neutral. That's what we expect pure water to be, neutral. The high end of pH, 14, are the bases, and the low end of pH are the acids. So CO2 is an acid, which means that the more carbon dioxide we have, the lower the number is going to be. So carbon dioxide is an acid. It makes pH low. So the more carbon dioxide we have, the lower the pH is going to be. So let me flip to my next page here. Let's look here at the top. So I'm asking you, which has more carbon dioxide up here? The pH of 6.8 or the pH of 7.2? Think about it for a second. Carbon dioxide is an acid. Acids have low pHs. So which one is going to have more carbon dioxide? It's going to be the one that has the lower pH. So not 7.2, that's a higher pH, that's more basic. It's going to be 6.8, the one with the lowest pH. So low pH means more acid. And in this case, carbon dioxide is our acid, so that means more CO2. I saw lots of people who interpreted their results the exact opposite way. So make sure that you know this for tomorrow, that our pH is a measure of how acidic this is going to be. So the more carbon dioxide, the more acid, the lower the pH. All right, now here at the bottom, let's talk about photosynthesis and respiration in our jars. So in this case, photosynthesis and respiration are happening at the same time, assuming that we have both snails and plants in the jar, which I think almost everyone did. So photosynthesis and respiration, we're saying, are happening at the same time. I've got our two equations there. The equation for photosynthesis is right here at the top. I've abbreviated it with a PS right there. And then respiration is here at the bottom with that RS. So in photosynthesis, we are using carbon dioxide and we are making oxygen and glucose. In respiration, we are using glucose and oxygen. We are making carbon dioxide and water. So in some people's papers, they had it a little bit confused as to which process was making which thing. So to be clear, photosynthesis does not produce any carbon dioxide. It only produces glucose and oxygen. Respiration is using carbon dioxide. So the more respiration that's happening, the more carbon dioxide we would be seeing used up. So as we look at this then, we have to think about which of these processes is happening more. Which process is happening more? Because they're both happening at the same time. So I have to think about this a little bit. If carbon dioxide is going up, what exactly is going on here in the jar? So if carbon dioxide is going up, that means that it must be being produced in the jar. So produce, that's over here with my respiration. So respiration makes carbon dioxide, where we know that photosynthesis uses carbon dioxide. All right. So if photosynthesis is using carbon dioxide, that means if photosynthesis happens, then the carbon dioxide would actually go down because it's being used up and turned into glucose. But if the carbon dioxide is going up, that must mean that lots of respiration is happening because that carbon dioxide is being produced. So that means I can conclude that if carbon dioxide is going up, there is, put my answer in a nice pink color for you, more respiration happening. Because respiration makes carbon dioxide, okay? So I saw some confusion, some flipping of things. If we see more carbon dioxide, which remember would mean that that pH is actually going down because low pH means more acid, which means more carbon dioxide, then that must mean that respiration is happening. Okay, the next question I asked is if oxygen goes up. So oxygen is our exact opposite on this. So if oxygen goes up, we see that oxygen is made in photosynthesis. It's used in respiration. So if oxygen is increasing, that must mean we made a lot more oxygen. That must mean that there's more photosynthesis happening. So more PS happens. So I would go back tonight and look at your results one more time and try to figure out, was more respiration happening or was more photosynthesis happening? Okay? Now if they stay the same, then that means that we had an equal amount of oxygen being used in photosynthesis and, used in respiration, my mistake, used in respiration and made in photosynthesis. So if they're staying the same, that must mean that we have equal amounts of things happening. Equal amounts of things happening. So go back through your results and carefully trace, did my carbon dioxide and oxygen go up or did they go down? Which happened? Okay, so does that mean that more respiration was happening or more photosynthesis was happening? Go back and check your answers to that lab report. All right, I'm going to give you one more view of this page. Take a look at it and go to my last point over here. The last thing I want to talk about just a little bit is the words matter and energy, because I saw these getting a little bit confused. So in our experiment, we were looking at some forms of matter or mass. So matter in our experiment was the biomass that you measured. It was the carbon dioxide, the oxygen, and any glucose that we knew was being produced in photosynthesis or used in cellular respiration because we saw the products and the reactants. Energy over here is light energy, and it's also the energy in the bonds of molecules. So to be clear, carbon dioxide, oxygen, and glucose are not energy, but they do have energy inside their molecular bonds, okay? So I saw people using these words interchangeably, and they're not really interchangeable. What we know is that organisms are using the energy that's in the bonds of these molecules in order to power their cells, specifically energy that is in the bonds of glucose. Energy in the bonds of glucose is being used to power their cells. So Be careful about how you use those words matter and energy, that you're not talking about oxygen as a form of energy, but rather oxygen is letting us know whether or not photosynthesis is happening, right? So for example, if we go back to our equations, we know that if oxygen is being produced over here, that photosynthesis is happening, which means that light energy is being used to make glucose and to store energy in the bonds of glucose. But oxygen itself, that's not the form of energy. It's just a sign that energy is flowing from the light into the glucose in this chemical reaction. In the same way, carbon dioxide that's made in cellular respiration, that's not a form of energy either, but it does tell us that organisms are using the energy in glucose in order to power their cells, and that carbon dioxide is coming out as a result. So, oxygen and carbon dioxide are not energy in and of themselves, but they're signs of these processes that are happening where organisms are either catching energy from the light and putting it into glucose, or taking that glucose and using the energy from their cells to, in order to power their cells. All right, if you have any more questions, please text me, tweet me, or email me, and I will see you tomorrow.